Really a privilege to speak to you this morning. So I lead Creek Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, and I teach at University of Winnipeg Political Science. We are assembling a network of scholars like most of you, retired officials, community leaders, humanitarian practitioners, and diaspora representatives. And we are trying to equip stakeholders with evidence and tools, policy notes, and scenario analysis as well. Gentlemen, our flagship development frame, which is called Arakan Prosperity Plan, in partnership with the Center for Alternatives and regional colleagues, we are championing this plan, a bold multi-year reconstruction and reconciliation package for Arakan, Rakhine, and other peripheral areas that have experienced armed conflict since Myanmar's independence. The logic is very straightforward. Without credible pathways to prosperity and inclusive governance in Arakan, neither return nor reconciliation can be sustained. How it will work? Regional first. It will ground our dialogue in regional realities with Bangladesh as a pivotal partner, given its frontline experience hosting displaced population and its strategic interest in a stable neighborhood.
There are four stages to this, what I will be presenting. This is stage one. And the stage one started in Winnipeg in September, where we first shared the concept note. And we had good number of people there, mainly Canadian policymakers, but we also had Rohingyas and also mainstream Burman individuals were also there. Phase one still continuing the concept note, and we hope your feedback so that we can refine it. The plan is already there to take it to Malaysia, to Thailand, Indonesia, and even to Philippines, mainly because Philippines is going to be the next ASEAN chair.
Here's a quick overview of the Smart Settle process, summarized in 7 key steps. In our simulations so far, we've modeled 6 key stakeholder groups, representing the main voices in Myanmar's peace landscape. At the heart of our process is a single negotiating framework, a living document that captures all issues and interests. We organize these issues under 5 strategic peace lines, developed with Rotary Peace Champion Maria Cristina Cifuentes. Together, these 5 lines form the backbone of the single negotiating framework. Guided by AI, the framework evolves through collaboration, growing more realistic with each iteration and ready for serious diplomatic use. The document produced by this process fully represents the negotiation problem. Once the framework is mature, we move to the bargaining stage. Each stakeholder refines its private preference model, its real priorities and trade-offs. The result of this transformative dialogue represents a comprehensive Marshall Plan that the parties wish to implement. The Smart Settle process proceeds as follows. Parties are encouraged to exchange optimistic proposals that represent somewhat more than they would consider fair, so that they still have some room to concede, but not so much more that the other party is offended. Smart Settle can generate suggestions that fall between the optimistic proposals. Some of these packages fall in the zone of possible agreement and may be acceptable to the parties. The suggestions most likely to become an agreement are the ones that are above the target levels. Parties reach a baseline agreement at the end of a session if they have all accepted the same package. Finally, Smart Settle generates an improvement to suggest a fair solution on the efficiency frontier. This last step invokes our signature algorithm, Maximize the Minimum Gain, providing parties a way to escape the Nash equilibrium and reach a fair and efficient solution on the efficiency frontier.
In the previous track, Rohingya did not say openly about much in the public is self-determination. Now we people are saying the self-determination. Because we lost everything since 1942. Now we have to decide our vision. Now we have to focus what the Rohingya need. For example, in our this generation, it did not succeed. We have to show that vision for our next generation. They will follow that vision. We create for them. So Rohingya will not want to see the withdrawal
future, with our vision, we try to develop a vision for the Rohingya community. They want to lead to build a country by under their Buddhist community. They call us Bangli. It means Rohingya are from Bangladesh. This time, repatriation is not possible because in 2023, the Rakhines are killed 240,000 Rohingya in 7 months. And we know that Buliran Township, Mundu Township, after we played Bangladesh, the Rakhines army and Small after fighting is really is their master plan to after the repatriation. Repatriation is okay, but before the repatriation happens, how will they be managed? Because, as you said, that the donors are already tired, and these people will continue to face security challenges and will be posing security problems. So I would request that I think it's very important to also include these people into the overall plan.
How much can we proceed? You're talking, you told to talk to the Tatmadaw. There is no relationship.
Our focus is to convince stakeholders to come for a peace plan, peace agreement, peace discussion, and then other things will follow through. So it might be a separate, very important research. This is one of the ideas that when I discussed with General before that, sir, please allow us to come here, because then what happens, we carry these questions to the other forums. And this is something I was told very clearly in September in New York. People are really tired and they want to know what should they do in terms of putting or investing more money, because there is no solution. We are not kind of interested state to state because it's not going anywhere, as you know, sir. And fundamentally, sir, we are saying conflict is expensive, peace is cheap.
You have to sit with Tamado and Arakan because they are the ones who will take them back. No, the United Nations is not going to take them back. By going to the United Nations, we gave a very wrong signal not only to Myanmar state and Arakan army, but also to China and India. And let me be very, very clear. 4 actors are required to solve this problem. 1, definitely the Myanmar military. Number 2, Arakan army. Number 3, China. Number 4, India. Why? They're neighbors.
So thank you very much, General. It's a pleasure to talk to you this morning. So, General, my question is, what do you think in terms of our plan? What do you see in general and the response from your group, sir?
My understanding is that there has to be some consequence, incentive, as well as motivation from Rakhine side, from Arakan Army, Tamadao, or Myanmar junta. Because without those, this repatriation is not going to take place. We have been seeing for last 8 years. It's not happening.
On behalf of the Institute, it's a privilege to welcome all of you to the launch of our phase 2 operations in this project. So, just to give you a brief what we are trying to achieve together with Dr. Imtiaz here, and you might be wondering how Canada is involved. So, let me unpack this partnership and the objectives. What we believe actually from Canada, that Myanmar remains the epicenter of one of the most complex and protracted crises in this region. The consequences have been felt more painfully by displaced communities such as Rohingyas, whose safety and futures are tied to conditions inside Myanmar. If the center of the gravity of the conflict is inside Myanmar, then durable solution must be anchored there as well. That is the sober logic underpinning of our project and our work together with Dr. Imtiaz. This project is supported under Canada's Indo-Pacific Strategy programming envelope. Our institute's contribution aligns with that focus. We convene credible actors, generate policy-relevant research, and build channels for dialogue and complement official efforts. Our intent is to expand the conversation from accountability alone to accountability plus resolution, sequenced, mutually reinforcing, and grounded in realistic pathways that can reduce violence, expand humanitarian access, and enable political accommodation over the time.
There are 5 phases. Phase 1 is the concept note, and we started from Winnipeg. And the phase 2 is the research. And there we want to decentralize it as much as possible. And any organization can join, any university can join. Now, once the research phase is done, then it will be easy to start negotiating. Well, first, the third phase will be negotiating or dialoguing with the stakeholders. And then the fourth phase is dialoguing with Tamado and Arakan Army. That also is critical. And then the last phase, of course, will be the track 1 level, where you can have micro summit and also macro summit. So the summit comes at the end and not in the beginning. Now, when we say pathways to repatriation, there has been several pathways to repatriation. So we are not throwing away the other pathway. I think the other pathways are all valid: bilateral, multilateral, imposing sanctions, accountability. All the pathways are valid. What I think what we are planning is to add more. The idea is definitely, we are, we see merits in the Marshall Plan, and I see no reason why something of that kind can't be replicated here in the Arakan region. Now, very quickly, we thought about 6 areas, but nothing is final. One is agriculture, number 2 is health, number 3 is manufacturing, number 4 is infrastructure, number 5 education, number 6 energy.
The 6 particular industries or sectors that you have identified that are quite useful, but at the same time, we need to ensure that whatever the research is going to focus on, may be a bit biased towards that, but unless the Rohingya population are made useful into those sectors, like as actually the fuel or the particular community that's going to run the entire sector, for example, the manufacturing or the agriculture, those sectors, within those sectors, those particular industries need to be identified and prioritized. Unless they are made useful to that particular Arakan prosperity plan, and not just the beneficiaries. For the Arakanis to actually have them as just beneficiaries and not a useful tool to that, that's not going to work. That's how they think. It's basically supply chain demand issue that we have to basically work on.
Also, that your proposition or proposal that or suggestion that we don't interact with the different conflicting groups. I don't know, as a country, as a state, Bangladesh is in a position to interact with the different groups which are fighting over there, because this is after all an internal affair of Myanmar, not of Bangladesh.
Here, I think there's a good possibility of the Rohingyas getting power through this economic understanding, with this prosperity plan.
I met one of the very enlightened person who happened to be, observing Rohingya crisis for almost a decade, and I thought that it is important to talk to him and understand what he actually is thinking about the resolution and our plan. Dr. Shah.
Thank you, Dr. Kausar. My name is Shahab Amkhan. I'm a professor of international relations in Jahangirnagar University, and I head a center called Center for Indo-Pacific Affairs. But I'm deeply connected to the Center for Alternatives for almost like a couple of decades now. I work on the Rohingya issue, particularly in the stabilization of Rakhine and to bring some sort of accountability and transparency in Myanmar as an overall, including not only the state apparatuses but also the non-state apparatuses. So I'm deeply engaged with different stakeholders in Myanmar and trying to find and suggest ways how we can better manage our relationship with Myanmar at the foreign policy level, but at the same time how we can help in stabilizing Rakhine so that we can create a meaningful pathways for the Rohingyas to return.
I mean, when we look at the Myanmar-Bangladesh relations, we can see that the relations are at probably one of the weakest points that they could be, not only since 2017 and since the crisis basically reached its peak, but also recently. If we look at indeed the map, we see no road infrastructure connectivity, no railway, nothing like this, and trade really being at a minimum level. Now, when we take this all out, basically this perspective, there's a great opportunity to actually utilize the economy and economic interactions as a way to really build something new, not only for the Rohingya community, but for the two countries, Myanmar and Bangladesh, in fact.
So my name is Sai Jizen-So, originally from Myanmar. I was born in Shan State, which is on the eastern side of Myanmar. I moved to Thailand in 2023 July. But before that, I was in Myanmar. So mostly my work is on human rights promotion, advocacy, and I was part of a different policy development process during the transition period. Usually the peace itself is becoming a tool for political advantage by the military. It has been practiced for many times with many different groups. That sort of history impose a kind of stigma on the peace itself. So recently, whenever you mention about peace in most of the Burmese community or Myanmar resistant group, proactive, pro-democratic groups discussion, you would be labeled as a traitor or not aligning with the democratic movement, rather aligning in favor of junta. So that's currently the major public opinion towards a peace process. That is also the reason why the peace, the agenda for peace has never been popular within political discussion or any sort of dialogues. On the other hand, with the political stakeholders or the resistant movement groups, they are somehow becoming much more fragmented because of not having a political agreement or consensus agreement, or not having a proper negotiation process among themselves, which is somehow creating a much more complex situation for going about peace process.
My question is to Professor Imtiaz that the Arakan Prosperity Plan draws inspiration from the Marshall Plan, which was implemented in a post-war context between states. However, Myanmar situation is an ongoing intrastate conflict. How feasible is it to apply a Marshall Plan model during an ongoing civil war rather than after it?
Yeah, well, this is the idea. Let me say the idea of Marshall Plan is roaming around not only in our case, even in Gaza. The Saudi Prince Turkey has talked about a Marshall Plan. Smart Settle, who are also our partners, they are also dealing with a Marshall Plan in Gaza and have done some simulations. So the idea of Marshall Plan is just to give a credit, to give a sense that you can actually have a different kind of a plan with erstwhile enemies, let me put that way, or in a conflict situation. The Marshall Plan also started before the war ended. That also is very important, the very idea, because it's a chicken and egg thing. You just can't wait for all the conflicts to end. But keep in mind, all war will end, believe it or not. To think that they would fight forever is not. The point is, did we give them another option? And this is an option which, as I said, may work or may not work. That also, I think, I have to flag. What I think is required is the research first.
So, what makes this Smart Settle involvement as a multi-stakeholder means of parties that are not normally at a negotiation? So, you can have certainly Rohingya, you can have voices for the environment, you can have voices for women, voices for youth, all at the table. And therefore you frame this as an opportunity for a sustainable, positive peace solution through inducements and multi-stakeholder ownership and creation, co-creation of a consensus for the solution.
The Arakan Prosperity Plan emphasizes economic reconstruction, diaspora engagement, and multi-stakeholder negotiations. Yet, I have seen that the discussion appears to assume a degree of cooperation among actors with fundamentally conflicting political agendas. How does the plan account for the asymmetry of power and interests between the Tamada, ethnic and armed groups, and the Arakan army? And what conflict-sensitive frameworks are being integrated to prevent economic incentives from inadvertently reinforcing existing hierarchies or perpetuating local grievances? Thank you.
You know, when we talk about asymmetry of power, keep in mind, you know, when we talk of power, we always in our head, and particularly if we are IR students or peace studies, we think of military power. But, you know, economic power is also a power. The point is, you know, how can this asymmetry be resolved? I think what Marshall Plan did earlier is to look into this issue of asymmetries. You know, there were asymmetries, don't forget, in Europe, particularly on the refugee situation. Keep in mind, the Marshall Plan also resolved the refugee situation that was there in Europe, and it was massive. Please go through some of the books and you'll see how massive the refugee situation was there in whole of Europe. So the point here in the case of Myanmar, the asymmetry situation when it comes to power should not be looked only from a military perspective. One should look also from the economic perspective as well. I think when we look at, yes, there is asymmetry, no doubt, but since we always looked at the asymmetry from the point of view of military strength, the military power, I think we lost the focus in resolving the issue. You can have other means of solving the problem of asymmetry that you have flagged.
What we are arguing here is that, remember the sixth pathways? That so far, you tell me, because all of you possibly have some ideas about Myanmar because of the Rohingya crisis. Whoever told Myanmar government / military that you have plan B? Nobody. All of us, you know, think about the pathways. We did all these things like accountability and justice and all these things. So nobody told them that, look, there's an alternate. If you stop fighting, come for a ceasefire, and you have these peace dividends, the way we call it peace dividends, that you have these things. So think about that this plan has whatever problems. As I said again, that we need to know the barriers that you think as an independent reviewer. Okay, you are going with this, okay, these are the plan, right? Whatever we have seen over the past 8 years with regards to this conflict and particularly Rohingyas and repatriation, etc., the main thrust was actually directed on justice and accountability sector. That's all. It needs and it's time actually to shift the discourse towards resolution of this conflict. And where it lies? In Myanmar. The problem occurred there, it ought to be end there. So our basic suggestion is that I think first thing we have to understand what is happening in Myanmar, within Myanmar. Who all are the primary stakeholders, although we know, but what are their objectives?
It will be very, very difficult even to convince the major stakeholders to come to the negotiating table. And because of security situation, fragile situation, I don't think you can even visit Myanmar and talk to different ethnic groups and their leaders, because all groups should be accommodated.
When the Marshall Plan was planned and also executed, then we actually had a kind of a world order system which was totally different than now. It was a bipolar world order, and now we are more having a multipolar world order system. And the places where Marshall Plan was implemented was fully controlled and influenced by the Americans, and there was no resistance for implementation of Marshall Plan. But when you are not talking about Arakan Prosperity Plan, it is a very complicated multipolar world order system where you are thinking to implement it, and there are so many actors, and especially without having full consent of China, there is no implementation of this kind of a plan. And China will never agree to get involved with any this kind of a plan unless this is been through the Chinese mechanism. I think Bangladesh needs to seriously think about strategic integration of Rohingya in Bangladesh.
Point on including China, as I said, Ambassador Li Jiming is very open to it. I also had a long discussion with the current ambassador on this issue. He also thinks the idea is interesting. Yes, there is a issue of geopolitics, and we are not naive on that. But in the beginning, on the research phase, you have to be as open as possible. Because at the end of the day, the Chinese would also want to see the research.
You did suggest that we add another line of action or pathways in our plan, which is about intercultural, elements between and amongst people in Myanmar and Rohingyas. Why did you say that, sir?
Because in any conflict, when it happens on the TV or on the ground, that's called direct violence. You see the violence of it. But behind the violence, there are a few things that happens. And the first and foremost is the ideational aspect of the violence. Somebody has conceived that a party will then deprive the other party and the conflict will erupt. So that ideational aspect is most important. That's called cultural violence. In this case also, there are cultural an aspect of violence which is conceived at least from 1962 onward. You have to understand those elements and try to unpack them and try to address them.
Today, we want to interact with the diplomatic community. After 3 or 4 roundtables, we have now the term Rakhine Reconstruction Plan that also got evolved. So Rakhine Reconstruction Plan is the first, I would say, the carrot one can see. There's no carrot in other, all are sticks. And the moment you end up with sticks and sit down negotiating with Myanmar, it doesn't work. Because they say, okay, you keep your sticks and we'll continue. So there is a possibility that this economic incentives in a public-private partnership will work. Phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5 will come after we have the research, not before. We don't want to jump into that.
The first discourse that we have encountered here in Bangladesh is the stalemate, a classic Nash equilibrium. Many of you are familiar with the analytical frame, so I'm not going into details and lecturing on that. No actor, neither the Myanmar military, nor the ethnic armed organizations, nor regional powers, has sufficient incentive to shift positions. The result is a stable but deeply suboptimal equilibrium. That stalemate has generated 3 things: quiet discussions on local integrations of Rohingyas in Bangladesh, increasing recognition of donor fatigues, and a fear of forever crisis where displacement becomes structurally permanent. Let's be frank, Bangladesh does not signal any intention toward local integration as of today. And from our direct interactions with Rohingya communities over 8 years, every individual we have spoken to expresses a desire to return with dignity, safety, and guarantees. In our Bangladesh engagements under the Charting a Lasting Peace in Myanmar project, we increasingly see military diplomacy emerging as a quiet but necessary pillar of the response. And I think this is something we have learned in this phase, and it is for our track to work. This layer of military diplomacy is possibly one of the key ideas bridging gap between security establishment and the reconstruction-oriented proposal for our plan.
What I see is one, the humanitarian problem, a huge population they're essentially wasting away because, they are not allowed to do much to be productive, to lead their lives, etc. And these areas are, essentially draining a lot of resources.
Can people are willing to give the land to them? No. Third one, they have a freedom to move? No. Even though they are going to back, they will strictly controlled by Arakan army. Even though they are back to the Rakhine states, their living condition will not improve because still, even not only the Myanmar majority, but also us and ethnic group don't like Rohingyas. Why? Because very simple. The Rohingya people is much different from other Myanmar ethnic group. First one, face is different. Face different. Number two, religion, most of them are the priest in Myanmar, but Rohingya is mostly Muslim. Number third, language is also much different. Rohingya is much more closer to Bangladesh, even to the Rohingya.
So my idea is that when the education or training, whatever way, could be allowed on the Rohingya communities, because I find that the people there needs education, needs training, especially some vocational training. If the people there have their hope, have their opportunity to be educated, have the opportunity to get a future job where no matter where the job come from, but anyway, as long as people get educated, the chance to be employed is getting higher.
Canada possibly doesn't want to take Rohingyas because they are not educated and skilled. Rohingyas have not been allowed in many countries unless the diaspora that you see, they moved to those places decades ago.
Culture can be an issue because we have heard from the ambassador in the previous session that he mentioned that still there are some conflict in terms of identity crisis. These kind of issues are there after a long time. That means we have to go back. We have to work on that. If they look dissimilar with them, that doesn't mean they have to oust. I found that the dialogue with the Arakan army it's being a little later. I think it should be come up with the phase 4. We need to work hard on that.
As we go into phase 2, the interactions that we are going to have and the researchers that will come out will create enough, I think, space for phase 3 and phase 4 and other phases. That's the point. But I don't think track 1 should come now, because if it comes, then it creates more problem than solving. So there should be track 2, track 3 and other tracks.
We have heard a number of times in the past couple of days military diplomacy, and I'm taking this phrase, I'm taking this concept and your feedback. I think it will be embedded in our concept note next year. This is primarily important for host country Bangladesh to advance in the future as well. The audience, we don't pretend to have a full answer, but our track to work is about mapping incentives and identifying where convergence is possible, so that when the moment comes, there is a ready-made, politically legible construction blueprint is on the table. Among the three structural options, return, resettlement, and integration, what is Bangladesh's official long-term position, and how will it communicate that consistently to citizens, donors, and neighbors? What policies and strategies will a future government adopt to make return a real possibility? Will there be investment in our project type reconstruction frameworks? Will Bangladesh champion special guarantees and monitoring mechanisms? Should Bangladesh establish a joint task force, as you have already heard from the moderator? And here comes the diaspora activism. This is important that you have an outlet in the Western world to continue the discourse, continue the ideas up and running in the media and other policy sectors.
If we can, think of investing in a public-private partnership, but as I said, research has to be done. Because I remember last December when I was in Cox's Bazar in the camps, UNHCR took us there to show
their work. I remember telling Rohingyas in one place that, do you have a health policy? Do you know how many hospitals you will need? Where will the doctors come from? What about paracetamol? Who is going to give you paracetamol the next day when you arrive? And everybody said, no, we haven't worked on it. I said, what about the education policy? How many whiteboards you will need? Where will the textbooks be printed? Have you worked on it? They said, no. What about agriculture policy, fertilizer? Where will the fertilizer come from? Have you decided where you want to sell the fish? He said, no, sir. So the point is, somebody has to work on those. I understand it's not going to happen tomorrow, but keep in mind, I have to tell this room, war will end.
The West Bengal, they have a plan for the Kaladam project. From the West Bengal, our last point, Dokhin Kham, they will have another sea route. India will have a sea route. And that route can be very well be used inside Arakan state as a corridor. So we have to think about how we control it, how we keep our influence. The Rohingyas, with the note of Dr. Imtiaz, the war will end someday, but then again, the war will start one day. And we haven't seen the war yet. As the speaker said, the crisis hasn't started yet. The crisis will start after 2 years when you don't have any control over the ground.
They have to be educated. So they are meaningful citizens. Even if they are repatriated, they should be able to sustain themselves and settle properly. And if you're with us, that's what we are saying in the future. They must be a contributing good citizen. The second, the Rohingyas have to be told very clearly, it's your secure your place. What are your thought process? Are you ready to take the challenge of securing a land?
রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস যেটা হয়েছে এটা টোটাল ফেলিয়ার অফ বাংলাদেশ। আমাদের ডিপ্লোম্যাটরা মিয়ানমার নিয়ে কোনো চিন্তা কখনো করেনি। আমাদের ফরেন পলিসি ওয়াজ নট টুয়ার্ড দি ইস্ট। উই ওয়ার very careful how to develop relation with our neighboring country on the west, not even in the east. এবং মিয়ানমার ওয়াজ টোটালি নেগলেক্টেড, যেটা আমরা কখনো চিন্তা করিনি। একবার শুধু আমার মনে আছে শহীদ প্রেসিডেন্ট জিয়া কিন্তু এই কথাটা বলেছেন, দ্যাট উই হ্যাভ ভেরি ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট বর্ডার অন দি ইস্ট, কিন্তু উনি এটা এই পলিসিটা ফর্মুলেট করতে গিয়ে পারেননি, সময় পাননি। উই নেভার কনসিডার্ড that there are some people known as Rohingya. They have been persecuted since 1948 when Myanmar was independent. আমি two state বিশ্বাস করি না. Two state is not the solution. And that two state is going to be very weak. Either you'll be subsumed in Bangladesh or you'll be subsumed in Myanmar. আমি যেটা মনে করি বর্তমানে মিয়ানমারের যে ডিসপোজিশন ভবিষ্যতে হতে যাচ্ছে, সেখানে রাখাইন স্টেট উইল প্লে এ ভেরি বিগ রোল, ভেরি বিগ রোল। এবং আপনাদের পছন্দ হোক বা না হোক, আরাকান আর্মি ইজ গোয়িং টু প্লে এ বিগ রোল। মনে রাখতে হবে, আরাকানের জন্য বাংলাদেশ হচ্ছে দি অনলি কান্ট্রি উইচ দে হ্যাভ ল্যান্ড লিঙ্ক। দে উইল নিড আস এভেনচুয়ালি, দে উইল ইভেনচুয়ালি নিড আস। আমরা ডিল করবো আরাকানের সাথে, আমাদের ইন্টারেস্ট হচ্ছে আরাকানে, কিন্তু আমাদের কোনো পলিসি সেরকম তৈরি হয়নি। আমাদের পলিসি যদি থাকতো তাহলে টুডে মিয়ানমার would have been a friendly country. In 2012 যে ম্যাসাকার শুরু হয়েছিল, which I will say ethnic persecution, particularly Rohingya, ওখানে কিন্তু মুসলমানরা এখনো আছে, কামান মুসলিমরা দেয়, বাট পার্টিকুলারলি রোহিঙ্গা এথনিক মাইনরিটি অফ মাইনরিটি, তাদের উপরে এই জুলুমটা কেন হলো, এটাই আগে আপনাদের ফাইন্ড আউট করতে হবে। There is fault of Rohingyas also. It's not only they. Every time they have gone on the wrong side. Every time. এবং এখনও কিন্তু দে আর অন দ্য রং সাইড। এবং যেই জিনিসটা আমি ঠিক বুঝতে পারছি না, হোয়াট ইজ আওয়ার পলিসি। এখন আমি যেটা মনে করি, সংক্ষেপে বলছি, নট টু স্টেট মাই ডিয়ার ফ্রেন্ড, ইটস মাইউ ফ্রন্টিয়ার কান্ট্রি, দ্যাট ইউ শুড আস্ক। সেটা ছিল সেন্ট্রাল গভর্নমেন্ট অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ, এটা ফ্রন্টিয়ার ডিস্ট্রিক্ট ওয়ার রোহিঙ্গাস ওয়ার দ্য মেজরিটি। এবং এটা তাদের আগের কনস্টিটিউশন ছিল, the majority ethnicity, they could govern themselves. So don't ask for two states. You ask for Mayu frontier state. And you should ask, not only ask, you should work for it. You cannot absorb it, you cannot repatriate. It's not armed struggle, it's diplomatic world. So we have to go for the diplomacy. We have to work with somebody in Myanmar, we have to also think strategic changes in this region. What strategic changes are visible? So we have to work with them. আমরা সমুদ্রের জোয়ারের এগেনস্টে গিয়ে পারবো না, যেটা যারা বলে যে মিলিটারি সলিউশন, আজ পর্যন্ত মিলিটারি কোনো সলিউশন করতে পারেনি। What military do, they create space for the diplomat to work. We are confronting a surmounting problem. Look, somebody said it is 1.1 million. Yeah, I don't think it's more than that. Have we counted every month how many babies are born? Every year, what is the population growth? It's much more than Bangladesh is. Today, that area, the Rohingya refugees, is more than local people. More than local people. And everywhere in the world, there's always a clash between refugee and local people. Thank God in Bangladesh it has not happened. Therefore, আমার কাছে যেটা সলিউশন আমি মনে করি, এটা ব্যক্তিগত আমার, এটা সরকারের মতামত নয়, স্ট্রং ডিপ্লোমেসি উই হ্যাভ টু ওয়ার্ক, উই হ্যাভ টু চুজ উইথ হোম উই ওয়ার্ক, অর মাল্টি প্রং ডিপ্লোমেসি। সো আমাদের এখন ফোকাসে দিয়ে করতে হবে। অ্যাবজর্পশন, নো অপশন, they have to go back. Where do they go back? They go Myanmar, back to Myanmar, back to Rakhine, in Mayu Frontier District.
In 2024, the Arkan Army intentionally, systematically planned on Rohingya people to drive and out to their original homeland of Myanmar. So we are talking now to support those perpetrators to solve this issue without the justice and real action. We need to see the solution, how will come, how we'll cooperate for the solution of this crisis. We need to see this crisis, it is not only the Rohingya crisis, it's a regional security crisis. We need to see that at first. For the solution, we need to see the actors. There are two types of actors, positive actors and negative actors. In the positive actors and the negative actors, there are two types of also the actors. High power, low interest actors and low power, high interest actors. We are talking about the Myanmar military and the Arkan army. They are negative actors of Rohingya, and also they have low interest, high power actors. So we are preparing, we are talking to engage with them. They are negative actors, but they have high power for the repatriation of the Rohingya peoples. Other side, they have also some actors, they have powers, but low interest. Example, the China, India, and the Russia, they have power to do something about the Rohingya peoples, but they have very low interest. So to solve this issue, we will engage with those actors.
We need to strengthen the foreign policy. We need to strengthen the engagement of the military, the forces, and we need to engage now. Since the options are limited, we need to engage ASEAN, which we have not done at all.
We cannot keep on smiling for a long time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
প্রফেসর ইমতিয়াজ যেটা ইন্ডিকেট করছেন ডিফেন্স ডিপ্লোমেসি, এই ডিফেন্স ডিপ্লোমেসি শব্দটাকে যদি আমরা এড়িয়েও যাই, এটাতে অনেকের অ্যালার্জি আছে, কিন্তু এটা আমাদের ন্যাশনাল ইন্টারেস্টের জন্য খুব দরকার। কিন্তু প্রফেসর ইমতিয়াজের মতো একাডেমিশিয়ান যখন এটা বলছে, তখন এটা কিন্তু গ্রহণযোগ্যতা পাচ্ছে। এটা কোনো আর্মি অফিসার, কেন ডিফেন্সের লোক বলছেন না। তো আমি এই কথাটা এই কারণে বলছি যে এই যে জিওপলিটিক্যাল সিকিউরিটি এবং গ্লোবাল ডাইনামিক্সের যে পার্সপেক্টিভ সেখানে তিনি যে মার্শাল প্ল্যানটা নিয়ে আসছে, এই মার্শাল প্ল্যানটা আসলে চায়নার জন্য খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। এই জিও পলিটিক্যাল স্ট্র্যাটেজিক সিকিউরিটি পার্সপেক্টিভ ভেতরে এই যে একটা জিও ইকোনমিক্সের সম্ভাবনা, প্রফেসর ইমতিয়াজ, এটা আসলে খুব সম্ভাবনাময়। মায়ানমারকেও যদি চায়নার মাধ্যমে তো সরাসরি বোঝানো যায় যে এই প্রসেসের মধ্যে অর্থনৈতিক উন্নয়ন আছে, অর্থনৈতিক স্বার্থ আছে, তাহলে মায়ানমারও কিছুটা নরম হবে।
The phases of interaction he mentioned, and there are several, the 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, none of these have worked so far. One of the reasons they have not worked is the peculiar mindset of the Myanmarese, or the government which ruled Myanmar. They shut themselves off from the rest of the world for well over 10 or 15 years. They just created a mental mind block around themselves and said, we don't need the world. So how do you negotiate with someone when he has blocked you out of his mind?
Like growing the diaspora, if we can bring them in, I think it can create a more it can create a bridge. They can feel more connected to their land, to their people. They might be more willing to work in those camps. The people might be more welcoming to them, thinking that, oh, these are our people. And yes, they have been away from our land for a long time, but I feel like this inclusion is missing in all the policies, and it can bring a more inclusive point of view in the entire thing.
Although military diplomacy was missing here, right, and you said that military already thinks about military tanks but not diplomacy. But I can recommend one which you can include beyond your research for further plans, which is, sir, Bangladesh Military Academy, the place where cadets are being trained for becoming future officers. They host cadets from different countries like Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Tanzania, and many other countries. We also send our cadets to different countries. So we can do this. We can bring the cadets from Myanmar Military Academy. We can also send our cadets to Myanmar.
Integration has serious problems. Bangladesh is in the trajectory of hosting such a large population is not good. I am not in favor of integration at all. I'm in favor of capacity building, which will link them in doing their own stuffs when they return. We are saying that if economic aids and other things come as reconstruction, that might change these century-old and decade-old hatred and animosity.
Imagine that while we are negotiating to send them back, prepare them to go back, but make sure that they become a part of your own development also. If you don't do that, we are just going down the question. It's going to explode from inside us, and we'll be left holding the pieces. Thank you.
পাঁচটা নেগোসিয়েশনই কিন্তু আপনারা নাই, আমাকে যদি বলেন, আমি তো এটা নিয়ে বহু বছর ধরে কাজ করছি, আপনারা নাই। আমি প্রথমে বললাম কি বাংলাদেশ মিয়ানমার, আরেকটা বললাম কি বাংলাদেশ চায়না মিয়ানমার, আরেকটা বললাম জাতিসংঘ, আরেকটা বললাম স্যাংশন। কোনোটার মধ্যে কিন্তু আপনি একজন এজেন্সি নেই, কিন্তু সমস্যাটা তো আপনাকে নিতে হবে। মানে আপনি নেগোসিয়েশন করবেন উইথ তামাদো, আপনি নেগোসিয়েশন করবেন উইথ আরাকান আর্মি। এখন সেইখানে আপনার পাওয়ার থাকতে হবে। এখন এই পাওয়ারটা কি পাওয়ার? আমরা যখনই পাওয়ারের কথা মনে করি সবসময় মনে করি সামরিক পাওয়ার, কিন্তু আরেকটা পাওয়ার হলো অর্থনৈতিক পাওয়ার। আমার কাছে যদি অর্থনৈতিক পাওয়ার থাকে তাহলে কিন্তু উনি নেগোশিয়েট করতে পারেন। যদি আপনাদের মাধ্যমে ওই যে ক্যাপাসিটি বিল্ডিংটা বললাম, সেই ক্যাপাসিটি বিল্ডিংয়ের মাধ্যমে আমি যদি ইনভেস্টরদেরও আনতে পারি যে আমার এই হলো ইনভেস্টমেন্টের ঘাঁটি, আমার $30 বিলিয়ন আমার পকেটে আছে, আপনি এখন নেগোশিয়েট করবেন কি করবেন না?
আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম।
Ani hona te min kam dara nara mara mara rati machi ni gore re hon bishi zulma gara gore mate haite Kinero mani ki ni rago to laki beli nero ki ma gagori bala mani ano ki ano motorcycle ni ano motorcycle by ano mani ano bada nur mi ki ham zani bare dori ere mara tara gore tema cha harile beli manam ka ni kangori ara khaine mere মানে আর জামাইদের হাম করতে জানেন তো আইতে ঠ্যাগুন লয়ের মারা তারা করে আতর করি ফেলা এর ঠিক নিয়ে বাঙালি মানে আর রোহিঙ্গা শিকার আছে বাঙালি তারা দুইজনে মিলি জুলিয়ে কি করে
Our country is a little different for what the success in the Gaza, in the Ukraine or the other side. This is our concern. It may not we are not denying we are not denying your project or your plan, but our concern is a little bit different because the people is the naturally so many interests they are self.
As women, we carry both the pain of what happened to us and responsibility for caring for our families in the camp. Even today, our mothers, girls, and sisters live with fear, uncertainty, and limited opportunities. But despite all this, Rohingya women remain as strong, patient, and hopeful.
তো আমার কথা হচ্ছে যে আপনারা এই আমাদের গবেষণাতে আপনারা সম্পৃক্ত থাকেন, আপনাদের এজেন্সি আছে, আপনাদের লোক আছে, আপনাদের এক্সপার্টিস আছে, আমাদেরকে কাজ করতে দেন এবং আমরা যখন রেডি হব তখন কিন্তু আমরা যখন যাব বিভিন্ন ফোরামে আমরা আপনাদেরকে নিয়ে যাব। ওকে, আপনি বলেন কেন এটা আপনার এগ্রিকালচার সেক্টরে আপনি কোন জিনিসটা চাচ্ছেন, কেন এইভাবে চাচ্ছেন, এটসেট্রা। সো এটা হচ্ছে সামগ্রিকভাবে আমাদের প্ল্যান। আমরা এই ধরনের জিনিসগুলোকে আমরা আরো এনকারেজ করতে চাচ্ছি, কিন্তু এট দি এন্ড আপনাদের ভবিষ্যৎ কোথায় এটা আপনারা নিজেরাই ডিটারমাইন করতে হবে। ধন্যবাদ।